Hello everyone, welcome to webology.in. I am Aakash Biswas and this is C Programming Lesson 1. So, started a series on the C programming language where you're going to learn C programming from scratch. You're going to go to the intermediate level of learning C programming and the advanced level of C programming. This tutorial is mainly intended for beginners who are just starting to learn programming and C as a first language, and there are no prerequisites needed for this course, for this tutorial. But if you have a basic concept of programming, if you have learned programming before, you have programmed before either in Logo or even QBasic, this will be very easy. Or you have programmed some other language, you have to learn C. It'll be easy for you to follow. As I said, you don't need any prerequisite for this course, but having the basic concepts in programming like variables, data structures, arrays, functions, classes, all this, if you know, will be easier for you to follow. I've done a tutorial on the basic concepts of programming. You can check that out. I'll put the link in the description below. Okay, with all that, let's begin. C is a general purpose programming language which is used for a wide range of applications, right from operating systems like Windows, the most popular operating system, and iOS software, the Apple's iOS platform, which is used for their Apple iPads and their iPhones, to creating 3D movies. Just see the power of and the wide range of applications that it can use, from operating systems to mobile devices to even popular 3D movies, software that creates 3D movies. C programming is highly efficient in terms of memory, in terms of space, time, etc. So we're going to learn all of that in the next couple of tutorials. It's very popular amongst amateur programmers and is used to learn as a first programming language. So if you're learning C as a first programming language, this is a very big advantage to you, learning C as a first programming language. It is 40 years old. Okay, so that is something people might little frown on. I mean, 40 years old? I mean, you're expecting us to learn C? I mean, are you crazy? Listen, guys, C is the most popular programming language, not because of its age, but because of its power. Next couple of tutorials, you can understand what we mean, because if you're learning C, as we'll learn later, you're just not learning programming. You're learning about computers in general, the fundamentals of how computers work, what are registers, what are variables, right? Let's move on. So don't worry about C being a very old language, but rather think of it as C, one of the most popular language and a very powerful high-level language. Standard C programs are portable, which means the source code written in one system works in another operating system without change. So, say if you're sitting on your desktop, on a PC, you have written a piece of software, a game, and you want your friends to play. So you give that piece of software and ask the other person who's on another PC to use it. And that is why it means being portable. But there's a catch to this. Suppose you have written the C program, the game, in a PC and a friend has a Mac, and you give him that software, that exe file that will be generated when you compile the C program. He won't be able to run because it's not a cross-platform language. So that this is one disadvantage. C is a compiled language. What does it mean? It means that the syntax that you enter, which is in English like language, be compiled in the zeros and ones in machine language. Okay, you need a compiler to do that, because the computer needs to understand what you have written in English in zeros and ones in machine language, because the computer only understands zeros and ones. So that is why you need to compile, and when you compile, you create the exe file for that particular machine. So if you have written your program in Windows, that program will only run in another Windows machine. You don't need to recompile that. But if you have written your program for Windows and you want that to run on a Linux or Mac machine, then you need to compile that program. You need to create another program that will execute on those machines. So it's not a cross-platform programming language. So this is one disadvantage, and I'm telling you guys from before. For our tutorial, we are going to use the Windows 10 operating system. It is much easier to use because you can compile using dev C++, which we'll look later, IDE. And if you're using a Linux or Mac, then you need to use a G C++ and you need to compile it on that, okay, with command line interface. Anyway, let's move on. And in later tutorials, we're going to look at the advantage and the disadvantage of C. So, C was developed by Dennis Ritchie between 1969 and 1973 at Bell Labs. Okay. In 1978, Brian Kernighan and Dennis Ritchie published the first edition of the book, The C Programming Language. I think Dennis Ritchie and Kernighan should be given the Nobel Prize, right? To make programming so fun and so easy for everyone, not just geeks and nerds who are whole day learning binary language or assembly language, but for everyone who's just interested in learning programming using simple English-like language. The C standard. Well, KNRC stands for Kernighan and Ritchie, the first developers of C, was launched in 1978. So that was the first edition, and it was known as KNRC. Then C89. So the first standardized C was published by the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, in 1989. This version is known as C89. That is why it's called C89. The reason for standardization is that when something becomes popular, a programming language like C, it needs to have certain standard. And the American National Standards Institute give the stamp, this is standardized and everyone can use a standard language. Then comes C99. In the late 1990s, several new features like inline functions, several new data types, and flexible array members were added to the C standard. This is known as C99. So standard 99, C standard, C99. Okay, so we're going to look at what are data types, arrays, etc. in the next couple of tutorials. C11. So this is the latest edition of the C program, which was launched in 2011. So it's known C11. The C11 standard has new features like type generic macros, atomic operations, anonymous structures, etc. All of these, C89, C99 and C11, all these three standards are also known by the name ANSI C. Okay, so remember the ANSI C has these three standards, C89, C99 and C11. So what do you need, to learn C programming? Well, you need a working computer. For our tutorial, we're going to use Windows, the Windows operating system. But if you're using Linux or Mac, then you need to know how to use a command line interface, and you need the GCC compiler. And as we're using Windows, we need an IDE, Integrated Development Environment, a software that will compile our code. In our case, we are going to use dev C. So I'll show you how to use dev C to write our code, to execute our code, and finally run it. Okay, so let's head to the real world and get coding. Alright guys, so now we're going to create our very first C program. It is going to be a very, very basic program, nothing fancy, but a very standard program. In order to create C program and learn C programming, you need an IDE, an integrated development environment, where we are going to write a code in English-like language, then compile it, which the compiler will compile it into zeros and ones, and then it will give us an exe file, executable file, which we can run and see the output on the console. Okay, so in our tutorial, we're going to use dev C++. Again, don't get confused that if we are using dev C++, but we are learning C, how are we going to write C code in dev C++? So dev C++ is a free open source IDE. You can download it from here. On this is the very first link that is given, and this is a very good link. Here is a website. Just click on this button and you'll get dev C++. So you can see it's a free, portable, fast and simple C and C++ IDE. So you can write C program in dev C++ as well as C++ program and compile it, and it will give you an exe file. It's a straightforward installation, so you don't need any kind of other packages, etc. But if you do face any kind of problems, any kind of difficulties, do let me know in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. Okay, so this is what you will get after you install it. So let me just close this. I'll put this link in the description below, so do check it out. And after installing, this is what you'll get if everything goes fine. Okay, see, dev C++ 5.11. okay, now we are going to create our very first C program. It is a very basic program. If you have certain kind of experience in programming, you know that the very first program that you're taught either in school or in college is to write hello world on screen, and we're going to do that. We're going to tell the computer to write hello world for us. We're going to create a program using C. So first thing, go to file, the many options here. Okay, first thing, go to file, then new. Then get two options, either source file or project file. As we are learning C, and this is our very first tutorial, and the next couple of tutorials we are just going to use source file, because we are going to write the complete code, okay, line by line, and then understand what each line means. Okay, so we're going to open a source file. We can also open a project file, which will come much later in the tutorial, but for now we're just going to open a source file, which is going to be a blank file like this. So don't worry, okay, if you're getting a blank file and you don't see any code or any description. Okay, so this is a project, classes, some other options are here, right? Debug, and I can minimize or maximize it, so I've kept it like this so that it becomes quite gives us a lot of space to write our code. Okay, so now let me write the very first hello world program in C, and let's see what we get as the output. Okay, so now I've written the very first program, and obviously these won't make sense to you, but don't worry, I'm going to explain each line of code, 6 lines of code, to you in detail. First thing, in order to see if you have written our program correctly, you need to save the file. Okay, so go to save as, and then have a location. So I have a folder on my desktop, and it's written as C programs, and I'm going to save it in that. Okay, so double click on that. Okay, now here comes the file name. Now remember, when you create a file name, there shouldn't be any spaces, so I'm just going to create as hello world. Okay, make sure there aren't any spaces in your file name, and then I need to save as type. So make sure, by default, as it's the norm in dev C++, you're going to get the extension as C++, but we are writing and compiling our programs in C, so we need to change the extension to C source files. Okay, over here, and click the save button. Now let's first go over here. Okay, we need to see if there aren't any kind of errors in our programs. You either can debug the program, okay, or you can directly compile, and during the compilation it's going to give us certain kind of information if our code is right, or we have any error, then we need to correct that. So let's do that. Let's compile it. Okay, so here this might look a little cryptic to you, but let's have a look. Warnings, there are 0 warnings. The output file in C user MLP desktop, which is here, this folder .exe, hello world exe. Okay, as I've told you, when you compile a file, you create an exe file. Then the output size is so many KBs, and the compilation time is 1.88 seconds. Okay, so we are done with compilation. Let's close this. Now we're going to run our program. Okay, compile and run. And there you go, voila. Hello world is being outputted on the console. So this is the console, the black console, black and white text and black console. Okay, now this is a very mundane and very boring and very simple program, but this is the very essential of programming. When you're starting to learn programming, this is what we generally do, create a hello world program. Okay, let me close this and explain each line of code. There are 6 lines of code, and let me explain that. So first, hash include, then in open angular bracket stdio.h, then close angular bracket. What is this? So this is the standard input and output file, stdio. Okay, so this basically is a file that will allow us to either input or output data. In our case, we are using printf statement to output data, because input data the scanf statement, which we'll look in the next tutorial. Okay, but for now, remember that for every damn C program that you write, you need to have this line of code up front before everything else. Hash include, okay, make sure spelling is right, because if you don't, then you're going to get a compiler, and we're going to look at that in a short while. Hash include stdio.h. okay, this is a standard input out a header file, which will allow us to either input or output data. Then comes int main, then open and closed brackets. So this is the main function. This is the head of the program for where the compiler starts compiling the program. If you don't have this, okay, then your program doesn't have a head and it doesn't know from where to start compiling. There are many versions of this function. It can be either int main or void main or just simply main. But as is the norm, we have written int main, and in later videos we will look at some other functions like main and void main. What are their uses, purposes? Okay. Next, so after you've written int main, inside this curly braces, it's the main part of your program. And what is the main function of program? It's just to output the string hello world. And what do we use? We use the printf statement. Okay, so we use printf statement to output strings, characters, numbers, etc. Okay, so between this parentheses we put the string hello world. Okay, make sure it's in double quotes. If it's in single quote, then it won't be a string, it'll be a character. Okay, so whenever you're going to output string on the console, make sure it's in double quote. Then what is this? \n. So basically \n is not useful right now, but when I'm going to add another line of code, okay, let's have a look. What is this going to do? So let me just save first. Okay, it's been saved. Then I'm going to directly compile and run it. It's going to put the next line. What was our next line? It was printf, which is going to output strings or anything that we put inside the brackets. On the next line, okay, this is what the purpose of \n is. There are many backslashes. We're going to look at each of them, like \t, \b, \0, etc. Okay, now suppose we don't add this. Okay, we don't want to. Let's save and compile and run our program, and let's see what we get. Well, you see, hello world, I love programming. So this is a bit gibberish, right? It's come in one line because we didn't include the \n. And now let's go ahead and add that \n and make our program a little more beautiful. Hello world, I love programming. Now here you can compile and run directly by pressing the F11 key on a keyboard, or if you just want to compile and see if there are any errors, press F9. Okay, now after all these are done, make sure to always close your statements with a semicolon, because the semicolon terminates every statement in C. Okay, if you don't put this, then you're going to get a compiler error. Let's have a look at that. Now I'll save this and compile my C program. There you go. What does it say? Let's have a look at the error log. This is where the program is set, and this is what the message is. In function main, error expected, semicolon before printf. So before printf you need a semicolon, right? We omitted the semicolon and we got an error. Let's go ahead and add the semicolon and save again, and this time compile again and see if we get any errors. Well, no errors, no warnings, 0 warnings. This is where the file is saved, this is the size of the file, and this is the compilation time, right? So make sure to always end your C statements with a semicolon, right? Because if you don't, then you're going to get a compiler error. Okay, lastly, what is return 0? Well, return 0 basically means, as this is a main function, well, if you don't know what are functions, don't worry, we'll be learning later. Int main returns 0. So this is basically used to indicate that the program ran successfully, and the int keyword here indicates that it will return an integer type return type, right? So it has to be 0. Can it be something else? But if it's something else, that means the program that we have run is not successful. Return 0 means that the program that we have run is successful. Int main should always have this return 0 after every program that you have written. Okay, it tells the compiler that the program has ran successfully. As I've told you, you can also have just simple main, and at that time you don't need to include return 0, right? You can eliminate this, and we're going to first save the program and then compile it to see if there are any errors. Well, no errors, good. Now we'll go ahead and compile and directly run it. It'll give us the same output. So these are the different types of main functions. There is one int main, there is void main. Let's have a look at that, and we'll look at what this void does. Void basically doesn't return any type, doesn't return any values, right? Then we're going to save, compile to see if there are any errors. No errors, good. Let's go ahead and compile and run it. It gives us the same output. Again, you might say that what's the point of writing int main or just void main? Are they any useful? Are they any different? I don't see any difference. Well, there's a lot of difference, and we're going to learn about this when we learn about functions. Okay, so I hope you have understood this, and if you have any kind of questions, let me know in the comments section below. Alright guys, that's it for C programming lesson 1. Hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, make sure to show your support by giving up a thumbs up, and let me know in the comment section below what do you think about this video, what are your thoughts on it. If you have any kind of trouble installing dev C++, you know, you might face certain problems, but if you do, let me know in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. And let me also know what your thoughts about this video. If you liked it, disliked it, hated it, loved it, and what are some of the things that you want to learn in C programming in detail. Let me know all of that so that I can include in the next couple of videos that I'll be doing. And do share this video with a fellow programmer so that, you know, the more views I get, the better it'll be for me to make more videos, though motivate me further to make more videos. And lastly, do subscribe, right? If you subscribe, then you'll get notified when I upload my next video. As usual, thanks for watching.